Today is Friday, May the 8th, and we're so happy to see so many of you on the call today. Today, we have a very, very special program, and it's my honor to introduce that program. We are very pleased to have our Rotary International President, Mark Daniel Maloney. Now, it's fair to say that President Mark has served Rotary in just about every leadership role possible. As a district governor, a director, as aide to President Jonathan Majiagbe. He's been a trustee of the Rotary Foundation, chair of our Council on Legislation, and of our RI Sydney Convention, chair, vice chair, or member of numerous RI and TRF committees, and now as our RI president for 2019-2020. Mark and his wife Gay are attorneys and are members of Rotary clubs in Decatur, Alabama, and are both Paul Harris Fellows, major donors, and Bequest Society members of the Rotary Foundation.
Good morning.
President Mark, thank you for making time to join us today. Family of Rotary and guests, please welcome our fabulous RI President, Mark Maloney. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Hello.
I unmuted myself and somebody put me back under mute. Greetings, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be with Rotarians from throughout zones 33 and 34, and maybe a few other places as well. Delighted to be with you this morning. Thanks to Director Stephanie Urchik and Director David Stovall and Director-elect Peter Kyle for inviting me to participate this morning. Excuse me. This, I don't have to tell you that these are unusual times, and this Rotary year is certainly ending in a way that is much different than I had planned. This week is just an example of that. Last night was the 53rd consecutive night that Gay and I have slept in our own bed, in our own home. And we have, well, first off, just separate and apart from Rotary, Gay wonders if we ever have slept 53 nights consecutively in our own bed. And I think maybe we did sometime in our early marriage when the children were young and, you know, in early grade school, that maybe we didn't have a overnight for the weekend or something along in there. But who knows for sure. But I guarantee you, oh, there hasn't been a president, a Rotary International president in 50 or 60 or more years that slept in his own bed for that many nights in a row. And Gay has also pointed out that the last time we shared a meal with anybody other than the two of us just together was on Friday night, March the 13th in Evanston, when the Canucks and the Maloneys were both in Evanston at the same time, and the Canucks, Holger Canuck and his wife Susan, invited Gay and me to come from our condo on the 14th floor down to the condo, their condo on the 13th floor, and share dinner. And ever since that time, we've eaten on our own. The full impact of this, you know, really hit home to me yesterday, because for the first time that I'm aware of in almost 50 years, it was the early 70s, Gay and I had the privilege to have a private audience with Pope Francis. And that was to happen yesterday. And of course, that did not happen. But, you know, Rotary presidents have had the opportunity to shake the hand of the Pope, to meet him briefly after an event. But the last private audience that I am aware of was in the early 70s when President Roy Hickman met Pope Paul VI. And the only reason I know about that is because the photograph of the event is in the offices of the Rotary Club of Birmingham, Alabama. And I've seen that. But, you know, this morning, you know, it's not just Rotary, of course, and it's not just Mark Maloney, it's the entire world. I was just listening on the news. Today is Victory in Europe Day, and there was to be it's the 75th anniversary of the victory in Europe in World War II, and there was to be a major celebration in Paris. And in the end, it ended up being President Macron, a few military officers, a small band, 4 soldiers singing the Marseillaise. And then at the end of the ceremony, Macron took some hand sanitizer, wiped his hands, and off he went. No handshakes, no nothing. And the original plan was that he was then to fly to Moscow for their big celebratory parade, but that's been canceled as well. So this is an experience that the entire world is sharing. And I hope that that has a positive impact for the world, that we realize how connected we are. We are absolutely connected. And this, no matter what we may think, the entire world is connected. And this is the greatest example of that connection. And of course, our theme for this year is Rotary Connects the World. And who would have ever thought that the theme Rotary Connects the World would have the meaning that it has now? And I have never been prouder to be a Rotarian than I am right now, because Rotarians have taken hold of the situation. We have moved from our in-person way of working to a virtual way of working. And, you know, sometimes we think that Rotarians are slow to react and slow to respond, but they have responded to this challenge immediately. And here I see there's 211 participants from throughout the Southeastern United States and the Caribbean and other parts of the world. And that is just phenomenal that Rotarians are making that shift. And I encourage you, one of the most important things there, you know, to me, there are 3 key things that Rotary clubs need to focus on: engagement, service, and even fundraising. But the most important one of these is engagement. Make sure, I hope your club is meeting virtually or doing something to engage its membership. If it is, great, but make sure that you're engaging everyone. If you don't see someone on that call or you're uncertain, your club leadership needs to be taking steps to reach out to those people. And they may say, you know, I'm just not into Zoom, and that's fine, but make sure that the contact is made with them to realize that they are appreciated, that they're missed, so that they understand the value of their Rotary membership. If your club is not meeting, or if you are aware of a club, if you're a district leader aware of a club not meeting, then you need to start mentoring that club to help them make that switch. And I know some people are very uncomfortable doing that, making that switch, but we found that, you know, I've heard stories of a club president in California who was ready to resign, and an assistant governor just spent some time with that club president, getting him or her familiar with how easy it was to do this, and now the president is doing just fine. And some Rotary clubs are so small, it's not so much, maybe so much here in the United States, but in Peru, for example, there are 14 small Rotary clubs that instead of them each having a virtual meeting, they are coming together for a group virtual meeting. And that way they have better opportunities to get speakers, and it seems to be working very well for them. So engagement is the first thing. Service. We must continue our Rotary service. And as things are opening up a little bit here in the United States, I think we have the opportunity to serve, to address the issues raised by the current crisis, and to perform other service while maintaining our social distance and doing it in a safe way. Don't forget about service. But Rotarians all over the world, the Rotarians in Italy, the 13 districts under the leadership of their district governors have come together and undertaken a series of very significant projects addressing the pandemic to the tune of almost 10 million euros. And that is not, a small part of that is Rotary Foundation money, but most of that are contributions from Rotary clubs and Rotarians in Italy, making a significant impact in providing the equipment and the materials that are so much needed in that hard-hit country. And finally, fundraising. We need to be talking to our younger members. What can we do in fundraising in the virtual environment? I know that some clubs are still proceeding with their auctions on a virtual platform, but how can we move forward? John Huko tells the story that you may know that John Huko, our general secretary, is a member of the Rotary Club of Kyiv, Ukraine. And he was on the phone on a Zoom call with Rotarians throughout Ukraine. And I guess they had a district fundraiser, and it was a virtual beer fest. And somehow they were buying virtual beers, which would seem a little tasteless to me, but anyway, and apparently it was a success, and somebody in Ukraine ended up with a case of beer at their front doorstep. I don't know how it worked, but it's innovation. And Stephanie, you probably need to be looking into that in your part of the world there. But those are the things that we need to address. And as I said, I've never been so proud to be a Rotarian because of the way that Rotarians have responded. And the pandemic is a dark cloud over the world, but every dark cloud has a silver lining. And it has been said that Winston Churchill once said, and I'm not sure this is right, but it's still a good quote, even if he didn't say it, never waste a good crisis. And at Rotary International, we are certainly making our best efforts to take advantage of the opportunities that this situation presents. Yes, this is not the way that you want to get there, but it is the hand that we have been dealt, and therefore we must play these cards the best way that we can. And we are certainly taking a look at that. At the last board meeting, we established a 9-member pandemic response task force that is going to look at the short-term issues immediately. What can we do to take advantage of the current situation in the virtual environment? And we didn't appoint just some of the usual faces on there. We've got some young folks as well, some Rotaractors. I've asked a Rotarian from Guatemala who's never had, he may have a district office, but has never been governor. He's been club president of a New Generations club. Hopefully we'll get some great ideas from these people. I do want to mention that even though we're not able to come together in Honolulu the first weekend of June, we are going to be hosting a virtual convention. And the virtual convention will be on the dates of June 20 through June 26. That's Saturday, June 20 through June 26. And on Saturday and Sunday, June 20 and 21, we will have what we would call the general sessions. There will be one general session each day, beginning at 8 a.m. Chicago time, so that would be 9 a.m. on the Eastern time zone, and that session will last between 60 and 75 minutes. Then through the week, Monday through Friday, June 22 to 26, we will have a series. There will be a total of 15. I've got to remember not to say the word series. Every time I say series, my phone comes to life and Siri thinks I'm talking to her. And there will be 15 breakout sessions, 3 breakout sessions every day, Monday through Friday, each breakout session for 1 hour, and 1 breakout session each day at 8 a.m. Central, 1 breakout session each day at noon Central Time, and the 3rd breakout session each day at 6 p.m. Central Time. And those will be breakout sessions that are fully supported by Rotary International staff with interpretation and technical support. And those 15 breakout sessions are 15 sessions that have been selected from the breakout sessions that were to occur in Honolulu. Of course, we had a total of about 68 breakout sessions that were planned, and those that have not been invited to be part of the 15, they will have the opportunity to put on their breakout session on their own online without Rotary International technical support, but we will promote that breakout session on the convention website so that people know when that will happen. And that will happen in the month of July. And we will have online sessions for Rotaract and for youth exchange officers. So I hope you take advantage of the opportunity. So, these are challenging times. Hopefully, I think we need to be very concerned about maintaining our connections with our existing members in an effort to retain them as members. And then remember that we're showing how innovative we are. And I think we may be, by meeting in this way, we may be appealing to a younger demographic, and that we can meet in a virtual platform. And so we will, I think there's the opportunity to take advantage of this, and to use another trite expression, to make lemonade out of lemons. I just saw the question was, is there a fee for the virtual convention? There is no fee. However, you will need to register in advance to be able to access the live stream platform. That information is not yet available, but we will be coming out with that next week. Right now first off, all information about the convention, about the virtual convention, will be in the regular space, riconvention.org. Right now, all that's there is a save the date, but sometime next week, there'll be more information about the schedule than more information similar to the information I just gave you about the schedule. And then there'll be information about registration, which breakout session will be at which time slot and so forth. So Stephanie, perhaps I've rambled on long enough. Maybe there's some questions that you wish to address to me.
President
Well,
Mark,
first of all,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
thank you for joining us this morning. I know we've asked you to get up a little earlier because you are in Central Time, so thank you very much. And a beer fundraiser, even virtually, sounds like something that would really go over well in Western Pennsylvania, so I'm going to look into that. I'm going to ask Director David if there are any questions that have popped up on the chat pane that you may not have answered already. David?
Thank you, Director Stephanie. Mark, could we take just a few minutes for some questions from the floor?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, the question is, has the board taken an action or considered how to integrate the virtual meeting approach permanently into standard operating procedure in Rotary?
We've not addressed that specific issue. That is the main focus of the Pandemic Response Task Force, to look at how we can use virtual tools more effectively in Rotary. However, the board has made the decision that all of our board meetings for the rest of this calendar year, even into Holger's term as president, will be virtual. All RI committee meetings will be virtual through December 31, 2020. And we are encouraging governors to make their club visits virtual, and regional leaders, Rotary coordinators, Rotary Foundation coordinators, to make their events virtual. So, we definitely see that. And I think we are going to see a switch, that instead of bringing all the committees to Evanston and only meeting in that way, that we are going to see a switch where certain committees, instead of meeting 2 or 3 times a year in Evanston, may meet once in Evanston and the rest virtually. And I think the board, once it gets back to meeting in person, I think there will be opportunities for the board to come together to address specific issues in the virtual environment.
I'm sorry, President Moore. The next question is that we all know that we had our worldwide telethon last Saturday for Rotary response to COVID-19, and that the contributions to that fund carried on for a few days. Has there been an announcement yet of the amount that we raised for that?
I think there was an email yesterday that I have not yet opened. So maybe you have that, David.
May have come in last night and haven't seen it. There's a question about fundraising in this environment of high unemployment economies. Any ideas on how we might do those types of things when where the surplus funds are at a premium, or how we might relate to the future for that?
I'm sorry, for fundraising events?
Yes, sir.
Well, I am not the idea person on innovative virtual fundraising events, but I know that my wife's Rotary Club, Gay's Rotary Club, is, they were supposed to have an in-person fundraiser next week, and they've now pushed it off into June, and it's going to be virtual. And instead of having the broad array of activities, they're going to kind of focus on a live auction, and how that will turn out, time will tell. My own Rotary Club is, we're still collecting the same level of dues, but we're not spending the money on meals. Well, we've made the commitment that instead of having the fundraiser, we're going to take the meal money and use it to fund the charitable activities that we would normally do. Those aren't very brilliant ideas, but I mean, that's just how, an immediate reaction. I don't have a whole pocket full of.
No, I understand. Not a problem. you mentioned about the convention and that it's free and that we'll have the breakout sessions and all that. Are you aware if it will be recorded so that people who cannot attend might view the meetings later?
Yes, everything will be recorded so that it can be viewed later. Because, you know, if you happen to live in New Zealand or unfortunately Hawaii, it's going to happen in the middle. You know, the general sessions are going to happen in the middle of the night.
So we've talked about the virtual meeting some, and let's relate that to the Council on Legislation and the Council on Resolutions. The Council on Resolutions is now being conducted, even before this pandemic, was being conducted basically virtual. Any considerations you think, from your perspective and your opinion, about the COL?
I personally am very concerned about a virtual COL. I myself do not see how that can work. Unlike with the board of directors, where we have a limited number of people and we can function to where we schedule things to basically nothing happens between midnight and 6 a.m. for all of the board or almost all of the board. With the COL, you've got 500 representatives in virtually every time zone. So Robert Knight is doing like this. I'm not sure what's happening, but anyway, I'm not sure whether I'm getting a signal or what, but anyway, he's on the tile right next to me. And so I'm sorry, on the Council on Legislation, unfortunately, with a virtual meeting, the attention of the participants is with you only until a pet jumps in your lap or a child cries or something in the background happens. Now, that's one thing with 19 directors, and I can see them all on the screen. If a director falls asleep, I know about it when I'm presiding at the board meeting, because they've got their camera on and I can see it. But with 528 representatives in virtually every time zone around the world, I just do not see, how can you have effective debate? With the Council on Resolutions, you know, it's this back and forth in written word and so far only in the language that, you know, if you're in English, you're only seeing English comments, you're not seeing the French comments, you're not seeing the Spanish comments. I'm sure there's some ways around that, but still, you know, you could have 2-hour session. I just have really great concerns. I mean, there was some discussion on that, and I was actually on a small task force that was asked to look at having a online Council on Legislation, and our report came back, said, we do not recommend an online Council on Legislation. It's an expensive proposition, I understand, but if you're going to have a multiple day event with lots of debate and lots of items to be considered, I think that's going to be very difficult. And the worst thing that can happen is that we have decisions made about our constitutional documents by people who are not paying attention.
Wonderful. Just a couple of more questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep.
The next one is, by the way, Pastor Director Robert Hall is on the call with us, and glad to have him here today. He has a question. Has our insurance coverage changed relative to the COVID-19?
Say that again, David. You were frozen on my computer. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I said we're excited to have Pastor Director Robert Hall on the call with us today, and he has a question about the insurance. Has our RI insurance changed relative to COVID-19?
Well, right now, the policy that is in place now through June 30th does not have any exclusions for pandemic coverage or infectious disease coverage. The reinsurance carriers that we deal with have notified us, and I think all insurance carriers are doing this, have notified us that there will be an exclusion for pandemics and infectious diseases effective the 1st of July.
Okay, sounds good. And I think that probably will do us for now, but we are so excited to have had you here with us today, even getting up an hour earlier than us and being here for us today. And let's all give President Mark a virtual clap. Back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Director David. I'm now going to turn the program over to Director-elect Peter Kyle, who has a special announcement for us. Peter?
Hey, thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, President Mark. That was a great message, and we're all delighted to have you join us. So we have a few minutes left, and it's my pleasure to introduce a really very special lady, past District Governor Ann Lee Hussey. Ann Lee is a polio survivor, and she has made the eradication of polio and alleviation of suffering of polio survivors her life's work. In the last 20 years, she has participated on and led almost 30 National Immunization Day trips to difficult parts of the world, countries where Westerners do not typically travel: Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and many other parts of the world. She has been a very frequent speaker at district conferences, international conventions. Message is inspirational. There's a lot more that I could say about Ann Lee, but in the interest of time, I'll cut it short. It's with great pleasure that I now pass over to past District Governor Ann Lee Hussey.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. And thank you, Mark, for your wonderful, and President Mark, for your wonderful message. We are living, as President Mark mentioned, in a very uncertain time with COVID-19, and I truly wish for all of you and your families to stay safe through all of this. The current coronavirus outbreak is so reminiscent of polio outbreaks that we all experienced in North America many years ago. Of course, some of us have forgotten, perhaps because many of us were too young to recall, but the current outbreak really made me think about the polio epidemics of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, when people lived in fear of the polio virus as it spread through towns and cities across our nation. Children and adults were at risk, yes, right where you're living now. People would avoid public parks, playgrounds, swimming pools, theaters were all closed. There were no large gatherings. And similar to this Easter season, ministers, priests, rabbis used radio. They didn't have the benefit of all the technology we take for granted these days. And those parents who could afford to bundled their children up and left the cities in hopes that more rural areas would offer them protection from the virus. Unfortunately, that didn't always work, and it actually helped to spread the polio virus into the rural regions. Back then, no one knew when polio would strike, who it would attack, or how to stop it. Very similar to what we're seeing with COVID today. And in reality, they really didn't even know how to treat the crippling effects of polio. They learned as they went, and I think we're doing some of that with COVID as well. I don't recall this personally, but I know my parents felt the fear, and in the end, polio attacked one of their children, and that was me. And I just want to mention that that was during the outbreak of 1955, when Boston had one of the worst epidemics on the East Coast. At that time, hospitals were overflowing. Sidewalks and streets were full of vehicles bringing in polio victims. Triage took place on the sidewalks as best they could, and many people died. Social distancing was a real thing then, and homes were quarantined. It was a challenging time, and I think we can all relate to that today with COVID. The fortunate part is that that year, 1955, a polio vaccine did come out, and so we had that to help us get through the crisis, which is unlike what we have at the moment now. But I just wanted to mention that our polio program, even though there are similarities with COVID, that it's very, very important that we continue to support the work of our polio program. We've made incredible progress. We are truly optimistic that we will succeed in this effort. But you know, eradicating a disease is really hard work. And getting to 0 cases requires sufficient funding, innovative strategies, perseverance, and it requires the commitment of every single Rotarian. And I just want to remind people that your personal contributions, those from your club, are needed now more than ever. And keep in mind that we also need you to create awareness in your communities of what Rotary is doing, because you and your clubs truly are the best public image voice for Rotary, without question. As we cross these final footsteps, as we cross the line to the finish for polio, I want to remind you of what Albert Sabin, the creator of the oral polio vaccine, indicated when he mentioned that the true luster was to be found not in setting the goal, but in having the courage to take every step to achieve that goal. And that's why I'm asking you to continue that fight with me. You need to realize that we are repurposing our polio workers, but they will continue the fight with polio eradication once the COVID crisis is over. They are preparing now to open the polio campaigns once again with a zeal that will cover children everywhere that we can reach 5 and under. It's important that we continue to do that. I also want one last comment. My mom was so important to me. If it wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't be walking today. She was that good as far as treating me and rehabilitation when I had polio and many other things that all mothers do. And since Mother's Day is on Sunday, I just want to give a shout out to all the moms out there and thank everyone for the love that they share. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ann Lee. As usual, a truly inspirational message. We are so delighted to have you with us. And I think we all rejoice in celebrating our mothers on Sunday. What a nice way to finish. And let me pass now back to Director Stephanie.
Well, thanks, Peter. I'd just like to remind everybody who's on the call that we will have another program Monday at noon Eastern, and President Mark has graciously accepted our invitation to join us again. And we'll also have a cameo appearance by another well-known Rotarian. So hope to see you on Monday. Thanks, Peter. Back to you.
Well, we've come to the end of today's session. I hope you've enjoyed it. As is customary, please mute if you aren't already muted, so that David, Stephanie, and I can, and you can join with David, Stephanie, and I in reciting the 4-way test.
Peter, before we do that, late breaking news just out of the box. Relative to the telethon so far, we had over 65,000 views on the telethon, and we raised over $500,000 during that event. Back to you.
Great news. Thanks, David, for that late breaking news. And now join us all in reciting the 4-way test. Of all the things we think, say, and do,
is it
the
true?
truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you and have a great week.